For assignment number 7, many shapes. So your goal is to get many shapes to appear on the screen. You've been using animation, you've been using the draw function, and that lets you repeat stuff, but now you're adding in another layer of repetition. So let me show you an example. So one that matches my example the most is, notice each time the screen is drawn, you have, I think, 100 squares, maybe less depending on perspective, up here on the screen. Frame rate slowed a little bit so you can appreciate like each frame the shapes are being drawn. So here's a bunch of cubes. There should be 100 cubes here. So this is the base level of the assignment. You can do 2D or 3D. So this one, notice like all at the screen, there's like 100 cubes. So if you want to get a 4 out of 4 with this assignment, notice this one draws them like, what, 3 at a time, 2 at a time? You have this idea of like repetition. I think this one illustrates it. If you click on the screen, it repeats. So two things. So if I click a key, if I press like A, it draws like 4. Press again, it draws 8 total. Then it draws 16, 32, so on and so forth. I think it's even clearer in this example. Notice each time I click the screen, it doubles the amount of shape that's on there. And then it doubles it even more. And if I keep going and my screen is large enough, it'll keep doubling. So that's the requirement to get 4 out of 4 for this assignment. Can you double the amount of shapes that's currently drawn on your screen? If you want 3 out of 4, then you're just drawing like 100 shapes on the screen at a time. That's your main goal. So to help you with this assignment, we have some starter code over here. Depending on your animations, whether or not you want to slow things down, you may have already played around with frame rate. So I think the default frame rate is either 30 or 60 frames per second. That's what leads you to see smooth animations. But in this case, we want to slow it down so that we see like each time the screen is being drawn, we see 100 shapes. It waits a second. Then we see another 100 shapes that change in some way. Either that's position, size, color, orientation, total count. And then down here in the draw function, what's new is this part that I'm highlighting. Notice you have a new keyword. Last time it was like the if statement and the else statement and the else if statement. Now you have something called a while statement or a while loop. This allows you to repeat things. In this starter code example, you start with a variable, I. Notice it's been initialized and declared in the same line. So that quiz question, the true and false one, is like, can you declare and initialize a variable at the same time? Yes, you can. Here's an example. Let I equal 0. I did 2 steps in one. And within the draw loop, you have this while. So what does while do? While is going to check. It's like a repeated if statement. So is I, which has the value of 0, less than 100? Yes, it is. Then just like an if statement, it executes this code inside the little squiggly braces. And notice at the end, you have a line of code. It says I++. That's the same as I equals I plus 1. Then you increase I grows by 1. When it gets down here, this part of the code, it repeats. So go back to the top. Let's say we draw another circle. We check to see if I is less than 100, and now I has grown to 1. Is 1 less than 100? Yes. So then you repeat this code. So on and so forth, and then you stop when you are 99. And then when you go to 100, 100 is not less than 100, so then your code no longer executes. It no longer repeats. Does that make sense? You've been doing it already. It's a loop is what helps you repeat things. You've been doing so in the draw loop, but notice that when you use the draw function, you don't really get to tell it when to stop. It just keeps going on forever and forever. Maybe you introduce an if statement so far to kind of reset the thing or make it bounce off the edge. But as for number of shapes, your control of that was little. All right, so to get the base assignment with this starter code, really you just add in a couple shapes here, make it change in some way along colors, position, opacity, or total count. You get 3 out of 4. I recommend everyone in this class try to keep the shapes doubling. That really puts together what you know about if statements and variables to accomplish that test to get 4 out of 4 this assignment. You want to see more examples? So over here, it says click on any key on the keyboard for random shapes before you can rash it. If you want to clear the screen, press your mouse. So let me see if I can make this bigger. Full page view. So I'm going to click a key. if I hold down a key, notice the shapes are being drawn randomly on the screen. If I click the screen, I click it just once, notice 2 things are drawn, and I think 3 more things are drawn. So each time, this thing does double, I think, but it's hard for me to see after a certain point. I think the rate that the shapes are being drawn does increase. It's kind of hard to tell. So like, where's the good example? Like this one over here, notice they use some text, and they tell you how many shapes are currently on the screen. I think it increases by 3 each time, yeah. So this person draws 3 shapes each time. If you look at their code, you'll see that part of the loop. I showed you the 3D one. I think this is just 100 cubes drawn in different orientations. It looks pretty neat. Notice each face is different colored. This one, it's rather simple. The colors of the shapes are all uniform, but notice position changes each and every time. We always get a different 100 3D cubes. This one I showed you, I'll repeat it. You start with X number of shapes. I think they start with, how many? Where does their limit start? So they start with 10 shapes, then it doubles to 20 new shapes being drawn, then there's 40, and then by that point it gets off the screen. I can't see any more doubling. I'm not sure how this one, I don't remember how the repetition works here. Let me see if I make it full view if I see any more. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's many shapes, or perhaps it's going too fast and we can't see the repetition here. Okay, this one's neat. They borrowed some starter code. They found some code on the internet and also modified it. You get different modes. The student like really went above and beyond. Notice how the colors change, solid colors, spread. There's a music visualizer. I didn't even know you could do that. Yeah, so this student already knew how to code before they got to my class. Okay, now this one's really neat. Okay, this one embodies like the 4 out of 4 example. Okay, so this was given last spring around Chinese New Year time. It starts with a 2, and when you click, or you hold, spacebar? Yeah, you hold spacebar, and then different shapes are being drawn. So notice the neat animation. It looks like fireworks. So many shapes are being drawn in different positions, and it's the same number each time the screen is refreshed. This one uses spheres, although we can't make out the orientation. There should be 100 drawn in different positions along with different colors. And lastly, you can have fun with it. Here's a bunch of pigs with different sized eyes. I think it has the same nose, but position changes each time. Yeah, there's 100 pigs being drawn, then it stops. If I refresh the page, 1 pig at a time until it gets to 100 pigs, and then it stops. So this gets full credit. All right, so that's my screencast. Mess around the starter code. This is the new bit of code that I'll talk about later this week. You may see one question we're using this new idea on your quiz, but since it's still new to us, you won't see a lot of this. But expect if statements, variables, all those kinds of things to be on Friday's quiz. The time is yours. Please code away. Your reflection should be up week 7. And I'll upload this